So with the announcement of the free 6-star operator selector coming on Arknights Endfield literally tomorrow, I have been bombarded with a lot of questions by my community with regards to essentially what sort of 6-star operator should you be picking from our pretty much first ever selector we've ever seen in Arknights Endfield. And hopefully this video will help you guys answer all of your questions, PokkeCorp, Lifeng, Lifeng, etc. So without further ado, let's get into today's content. So first things first, you guys can just take a look into our PokkeCorp little Twitter over here where we summarize everything that this brand new devs comp summary is going to be entailing. Mainly it's going to be a couple of quality of life issuance. So for example, your enemies are going to be a lot easier, a couple of blue and purple gear quality materials. The video is going to be up on my main channel, you can kind of take a look at that. But for today's video on my PokkeCorp channel is basically just which 6-star standard operator should you guys be choosing from, which is going to be one of the 5 options. Rite, PokkeCorp, Lifeng, Ember, as well as Ardelia. So before even watching this content, if you want to see like what role these units do, kind of check out our original video on this channel where we are going to be going for the best units to reroll for, exactly what are the kits for the 6-star standard operators to get a better understanding of what they're going to be able to bring to the table, right? Then after watching the video, come back over here, and this is just going to be my opinion as someone that's been pretty much playing this game almost every single day, and I also have access to every single unit, and we also have played through both CBTs. I have one free play account. This is gonna be our basically the big boy account where we kind of have almost every single unit. So generally speaking, I'll just be going straight through, right? So out of your 5 different 6-star operators, the number 1 unit that you probably should not choose is pretty much going to be Ardelia, because everybody would have gotten one copy of Ardelia for free. If you have been playing this game from day 1, this is going to be day 14, so by day 10, you would have not only gotten her on day 3, but also her signature weapon on day 10 itself, right? So the thing with Ardelia is you can take a look from the Dupes over here. So the first bonus is going to be giving you the additional art as well as physical size by 8%. So an overall decent amount of damage increase. Then this one gives you a little bit more of a comfort when we're going to be getting more healing. This one is going to give you a little bit more of a duration for the ultimate, as well as increasing more of the low dose, so you can heal a little bit more when you pick them up. And then E4 is going to be the same for everyone. It's going to be ultimate energy. And then 5 is just going to be one of the big boys where you can increase your corrosion applied as well as the combo skill cooldown -2, so you can rotate a lot faster, right? So out of every single one of these potentials, I would say that Ardelia is going to be completely viable at P0. There really isn't too big of a requirement to go for the P1 or P2, and generally speaking, you'll find this to be the case for a lot of Arknights Endfield operators, where most of the 6-stars they are not really going to be too tied up with the operators itself, right? As long as you're going to be able to play them in the base kit, whether or not you get their additional potentials, at best it will change your rotation by a little bit, as well as increase your damage, but nothing too game-changing compared to, for example, Hongai Star Rail, Zenland Zone 0, Genshin, or even Warning Waves P1 and P2, right? So I would say for most players, there's almost no point in getting a potential dupe for Ardelia unless you literally have every other unit already involved. So I'll split that into the second portion. So the first portion is assume you can only pick one and you do not have these units, right? So that's going to be that. Ardelia first unit is going to be out. So that brings us to our remaining 4 options. Now I'm going to be talking about my personal favorite unit in the entire game, and that's going to be Ember. I have pretty much been raising my own Ember all the way up to level 80, and I also was testing her out with my physical team with Lifeng, Administrator, as well as Chen. Frankly speaking, I have very high hopes for Ember. I've also been digging up a couple of CN guides for Ember itself, as well as some of the Ember mains from CN, where they can make use of Ember's impressive stagger ability, which is going to be seen from the base attack chain, as well as the skill point generation ability, right? She is pretty much one of the highest in the whole game when it comes to both stagger as well as skill point generation, because her attacks are so slow, but it hits for very high. So most CM players, as well as I myself, we have basically ran Ember as the on-field, the one in control, the operator in control, but she's not really a DPS. She doesn't really deal damage herself. Her role is just going to be there for you to apply stagger as well as skill points to generate your entire physical team with, for example, Lifeng or PokkeCorp, to stack on your vulnerability stacks a lot faster. And then lastly, you can just hang on either with a Chen or an admin. And then if you're going to be able to use Chen to apply more vulnerability, you can then PokkeCorp with either PokkeCorp or admin to deal substantial damage. So I would say that Ember is a unit that I think has a lot to be desired. I would say if you're strictly talking about in terms of higher possible damage, then she's probably not going to be the best option compared to the actual premium 6-star physical team, which I'll be explaining later, right? For her general role also, I think this is going to be a little bit understated, is that she is a true definition of a wheelchair unit, because she's one of, if not the most combo unit to play, because you're going to be able to trigger this combo skill every single time you get hit. So if you're going to be playing Ember, you actually want to get hit in order to get this free knockdown, which happens once every 90 seconds, which is going to be quite nice. And on top of that, her own skill is going to be dealing even more damage as well as dealing more stagger when she's going to be able to cast this in the middle of her getting hit, right? So her entire gimmick is a character that wants to get hit, which makes it perfect for players that don't want to dodge. You don't want to dodge, you just want to have brain dead, just spam your left click and just get hit, and you're going to be essentially accessing the entirety of Ember's kit. And then all you have to do is just tie the rest of the physical team together to stack on vulnerability and then add on all the damage from Crush, or in this case for PokkeCorp, using PokkeCorp to basically trigger the additional reach, which will give you the additional vulnerability for physical damage, right? So that's gonna be that for Ember. Honestly, very comfortable DPS. Now for Ember's dupes and all that kind of stuff, I will save all these for the second portion. So the first part, I'm just gonna be talking about their baseline at P0, assuming you do not have these units, right? And then for next unit, it's gonna be pretty much both PokkeCorp as well as Lifeng. I think both of them are gonna be in a very similar situation. So for example, if you're somebody that has already invested in the physical team and you have PokkeCorp on your account, then getting Lifeng is going to tie the team very nicely, because right now the current best in slot, highest possible damage 6-star physical is going to be both PokkeCorp and Lifeng in the same team, because they just synergize with each other so well. PokkeCorp gave you the additional skill points, additional stagger, as well as the vulnerability, and then Lifeng is just going to be the one dealing an absurd amount of damage to the Link, as well as her insane ultimate damage multiplier. So these two are just working hand in hand. If you can kind of think of this as like the more premium version of the Lightning team with Evie as well as Arknights. Except that the other two units for physical is going to be way more advanced, right? So whichever one you don't have and you want to play physical team, you can then pick the other one, and then that will be a very straightforward option. But if you do not have both units, now if that's going to be in your situation, I would personally say PokkeCorp is going to be having more of an edge compared to Lifeng, because PokkeCorp's ability, especially if you take a look at Ultimate, he is the only unit in the physical team right now that can regenerate you skill points. So this is going to be a really good ultimate, which is also one of the reasons why Arknights is going to be so versatile. You can see Arknights being used out of heat teams, even with your physical, even with your lightning teams. If you want to run the additional skill point just for ultimate, she's able to do so. And PokkeCorp is going to be the one that has basically the best in slot SP battery for any physical team. So although he might not be dealing as much damage as compared to Lifeng, the amount of utility you're going to be getting from PokkeCorp means that if in the future we get a better 6-star physical operator to do more damage, you are definitely going to be able to still run PokkeCorp while running Lifeng, either with Lifeng or with a brand new 6-star operator you can install on your team. I would say in a predictable future, where if you have both of these units, the next 6-star is most likely going to be either replacing your Dupes or Chen, depending on which one is going to be applying more of the stacks or doing more of the damage. I would say Chen is going to be an operator that's very hard to replace, just simply because of her kit being so simplistic and giving us a lot of live stacks to apply all of our vulnerability together, right? So TLDR, I would say in the physical team, PokkeCorp is just going to be a little bit more important compared to Lifeng. It is not so that Lifeng is worse, it is just more so that PokkeCorp's usage is very hard to replace because of this skill point generation, on top of all of the breach, which just overall increases all of our physical damage capabilities, no matter what physical DPS you're going to be using. Also, yeah, one small note about the overall global passive is that PokkeCorp pretty much is one of the best dash animation in the entire game. So for overall exploration, you can see he can pull himself forward, which can cover the highest amount of distance simply from your quality of life when you want to explore the overall, right? So if you want to think about that running around, this is pretty much the man to go for, because he really just covers the most amount of distance out of any units. Now, with all that being established, we've pretty much come to the end of our final 6-star operator, and that is going to be Rite. So Rite is pretty much gonna be the true boss slayer. She has the highest single target DPS burst out of any character right now in the 6-star operator field, inclusive of even Yvonne. So right now, the highest potential damage, if you can really see her use case with, for example, with Rodan, this is going to be an exceptional showcase for Rite. If you have your rotations properly done, she can pretty much dispatch the fight in like an insane amount of time, which is never before seen by any other 6-star operator. So when it comes to single target burst damage, Rite is definitely going to be the one you're going to be using. We are still on our way to investing in her ultimate as well as her skills, and once we level up, then that's going to be a lot better for us, right? But as of right now, I would say if you want to play a ice, or rather a cryo DPS, and you have no intention of pulling for Yvonne, so for example, in a predicament where you want to skip Yvonne, you want to, for example, like skip Gilberta, and you just want to don't get any other ice DPS, and because you want to, for example, race in a cryo team, then I think Rite is going to be a very safe choice. There is one concern, which is if you want to say pull for Gilberta, because honestly, Gilberta as a general support is a very exceptional unit as well. You could consider holding on to this Selector first, putting on Gilberta's banner, and then if you somehow manage to get like Last Rite or Yvonne in that banner, then you don't really care about this anymore. Then for Gilberta herself, I would say she's gonna be an excellent addition to the crowd team as a whole because of the arts infliction as well as arts accessibility. And on top of that, because she inflicts nature infliction, you can also combine that for solidification for any of the crowd teams. One thing to note actually at this point of the video is to say that this selector, they didn't exactly say if there's gonna be an expiry date. You can kind of take a look over here. So they only say they're gonna be giving this out at the end of chapter 1, process 1. I would say that if there's no real rush to get any of the 6 stars here, you could consider just holding it for a little bit more, maybe even in version 1.1, if you want to see, like, let's just say you want to put for Zhang Fengyi or any of the other units, and you lose your 50-50 to, like, for example, a 6-star standard operator, then you can see where you can take this, right? There isn't really any rush per se, unless they say there's going to be an expiry date, in which case, we are going to be able to adjust accordingly, right? But back to the video at hand, yes, Last Rite, if you are going to be playing for Cryo, and you do not have any interest for Yvonne, she's gonna be an exceptional pick. One note for Last Rite is pretty much her early game rotation. So if you're a new player, you just start out playing this game and you are progressing through the story, or you're gonna be farming, her combos feel very, very clunky, right? I'm pretty sure a lot of Last Rite means you have to know exactly what I'm talking about. Her early to mid-game experience when I'm going to be dealing with mobs is extremely annoying because all of her hits are just single target. Her entire combo is going to be single target. So if you do want to try to group up with this kind of like mobs, and especially when they're scattered all over the place, it gets very, very annoying, especially because as of right now, we don't really have a proper cryo grouper. Maybe when Gilberta comes, it's going to be a lot easier, but Last Rite's early game experience is not to be, not too high, right? That's going to be safe. So to kind of summarize, for assuming that you do not have any of these units, personally, I will just pick one of those that you don't have. For the highest priority, I would say, generally speaking, Pokke just appears to be one of the better picks if you want to play physical team, right? This guy's role is almost irreplaceable because of the skill point generation, as well as the utility he's going to be able to provide, not to mention the overall exploration with the off the dash and everything, right? Then after Pokke, if you really have Pokke, getting Lifeng is also a very nice pick. These two just work exceptionally well with one another, so you can always just go ahead and have a very fun time with a physical team. Then for Ardelia, personally would not be getting her under most circumstances. And then Ember is really just like if you want to play a wheelchair DPS, or if you want to try some alternative physical team comps, you can consider running Ember. And then lastly, Last Rite is pretty much going to be, if you want to play a crowd DPS, you can just go ahead and pick her. Now, at this point of the video, I'm just going to go ahead and talk about what if you have every single one of these operators. Which one of the operators' dupes should you be considering? Now, out of every single 5 6-star operators we have, I would say without a shadow of a doubt, the most impactful P1 after playing through pretty much with every single one of them is going to be P1 Lifeng. This Lifeng really improves the way a lot when it comes to playing, because the way that Lifeng works is you will only activate his battle skill when the enemies do not have any sort of vulnerability, right? So that he can inflict this physical sus which is going to amplify your damage. If you do unlock this P1, it will not just improve this effect by 5%, but you can also trigger this for enemies with no more than 2 vulnerability. This makes the overall rotation with Lifeng a lot smoother, because now you don't have to only use the skill when the enemies have no stacks. You can actually try to squeeze in a couple of the skills even before the enemies has less than, let's just say, 2 stacks. For example, you have to activate an Ember combo skill. As long as they do not have more than 2 vulnerability, you can still use Lifeng's skill to apply this physical sus, which I would say is going to be the biggest impact of the change compared to any other of our 6-star operators. So if you're going to be a physical main and you love to play Lifeng and you know how Lifeng's kick work, you will know that this P1 is absolutely insane. And then since we are on Lifeng, his P2 is just going to be an all attribute buff, which is going to be okay, especially for one of the tracers where you can pretty much just convert your intellect and will for more attack. So this synergizes quite nicely just for a couple of raw stats, but nothing too crazy because your tracer is going to be the exact same. Then for your P3 is pretty much going to be even more additional attack, so you're going to be getting even more of the stats. And then P4 is the ultimate cost, nothing to say. And then your P5 is just going to be dealing additional physical damage as well as stagger, which will just help you rotate and break the boss a lot faster. But I will not really be talking about their P5 for the most characters. I'll just be focusing mainly on the P1s and P2s, since I think most players will not be getting anywhere before this, right? So all the potentials, P1 Lifeng is going to be the best if you're going to be playing physical team. Then another potential that's going to be pretty decent is also unironically going to be Pokke's P1. So Pokke's P1 is when you're hitting at least 2 enemies, you also return 15 skill points after casting your battle skill. So it will once again help improve rotation. Generally speaking, in Arknights Endfield, the potentials that have the highest amount of impact usually will always revolve around either the ultimate cost, which is always going to be P4, or it is going to be revolving around skill point generation, which at this point is going to be for Pokke's P1. Unfortunately for this Pokke P1, you can only activate this when you hit at least 2 enemies. So for enemies like Rodan, or if you're going to be going up against like a single target boss face like a Marble, this is going to be completely useless. So it's not going to be as versatile as compared to Lifeng, but nonetheless, if you can trigger this P1, it is going to be very exceptional. And then on the other hand, P2 is just going to be a overall increase in damage, so that's going to be that. And then P3 is going to be increasing your overall stats of yourself, as well as your skill point recovery gain is going to be reducing to 60, right? So generally speaking, I would say P1 PokkeCorp is going to be okay, but not as impactful as compared to P1 Lifeng over here. Of course, if you're already someone that already has P1 Lifeng and you love playing physical, then you can go for the ultra premium team, for example, in this case, especially up against the multi-target content. Now, next up for Ardelia's potential, I mentioned a little bit at the start of the video. P1 is going to be a straight up a damage increase, P2 for more heals, P3 for even more heals for the ultimate energy, as well as P5 is going to be the ultimate. Generally speaking, for Ardelia, it's just straight up more comfort, specifically the P2 and P3s, especially if you're going to be having trouble sustaining. If you're just going to be caring about damage, then honestly, P1 is going to be a pretty decent increase, but doesn't really change the rotation by that much. But however, if you're somebody that has every single character, and you know for a fact they're going to be using Ardelia for a very long time, right? Let's just say, for example, you pull Levity, and you know you're going to be running Ardelia with Levity for a super long time, and you don't want to play physical team, then I would say you can consider getting this P1 because Ardelia is just going to be that universal. You can run them in the, for example, the fire team, but generally speaking, Ardelia's universal strength with the additional effect art as well as physical sus is going to make her a little bit better in terms of damage amplification. Then these two are just going to be for your comfort, right? And then for the next unit is pretty much going to be our Ember. I would say Ember's potentials are not going to be that crazy, so this one will increase your protection effect, which is basically like this it's sort of like hit stun prevention. So you take less damage and you don't really get staggered as frequently. So you're just going to be increasing your overall comfort. This one is going to be for stats, and then this one is going to be for a little bit more HP. But generally speaking, I would say for Ember, her potentials are really underwhelming. You don't really care about it by that much unless you really want this additional 20% protection for more comfort on top of that, right? And then for our last unit when it comes to potential, and that's going to be last, right? I would say that for last, right, this one, the very first potential is quite okay because of the additional 5 stagger, just to help you hit that breakpoint a little bit faster. But compared to PokkeCorp as well as Lifeng or even Ardelia, I would say it's not going to be as impactful. But the good thing is that because this appears for every single final strike, the stagger can definitely add on very high, especially if you want to chain up some, like for example, single target one-hit KO combo, which is usually done with combo skill into a ultimate. This can also help you get a rotation a little bit better as well, right? Then this is going to be more stats, and then this is going to be more damage multiplier for your combo skill as well as the ultimate. I would say this is one of those rare cases where the potential tree is actually really good, because majority of last strike damage actually comes from the combo skill as well as ultimate. This will be a significant damage increase because it's straight up a damage multiplier increase. So it's a separate field from all of the damage formula. So P3, I would say, is going to be a very good point. P4, honestly, is also quite nice for last strike because you can actually get your ultimate energy a lot faster, and that's where majority of the burst is going to be coming from, right? And then P5 is just going to be even more skill point, more damage, all that kind of stuff. So with that, we have pretty much come to the end of this video. I tried to wrap it up as much as I can, one with the dupes and one without the dupes. So to kind of summarize everything at this point, so this is a summary portion. Physical team players, get PokkeCorp if you do not have PokkeCorp. If you already have a PokkeCorp, you can get a Lifeng. And then Ember if you want to get yourself a little bit more of a comfortable or wheelchair DPS, or you want to explore other things. Last, right, if you're going to be concerned about your ice DPS and you do not want to play, for example, Yvonne. If you did not have Yvonne and you have no intention to pull Yvonne, then you can just get yourself a last, right? And then Ardelia, generally speaking, you're not going to be choosing her. And then when it comes to the potential, because you already have everyone, Lifeng is going to be the most important, followed by PokkeCorp, followed by Ardelia. Last, right, it is only really good if you can get it all the way out of P3 to P4. So it's going to be quite out of reach. Then Ember's potential is going to be one of the least impactful, right? So hopefully this video was helpful. It's very fast paced. Let me know guys in the comments if you have any questions. Feel free to join on Discord. I'll try to answer as many questions as possible. With that, I'm going to end today's content. All the best, I got to see you guys next time. Bye bye.